Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to another Money Monday on the Daily Huddle.
Wait till he goes live.
I know. Live. Now we're live. You guys got to see that a little bit live, but there you go.
Good morning, and welcome to another Money Monday on the Daily Huddle. We've got some continuation of some exciting things that we talked about last week, and after feedback, we decided that we'd ask Miss Elmire if she'd do a 3-part series on nonprofits. So we're going to talk about that as we go today. But before we get started, who can tell me the type of apple that's most stressful for nonprofit people to eat?
I mean, come on, y'all know this.
Apple.
The gala apple.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay then.
We're always super appreciative of Zach's cheesy joke. He's a good cheesy joke giver, right?
Yes, it's one of my callings.
So before we get started today, obviously Zach has introduced ourselves, but I will again. I'm Kimberly. This is Zach, and Miss Elmire is our guest again this week. So super excited to have her back. And today we're going to talk about why a nonprofit. But before we do that, we have our daily huddle questions to get us into the feel good part of our day and to talk to you guys and kind of see who you are and where you are. So Cece, what time is it and what are you grateful for?
Good morning. Good morning. The time is now, and I'm grateful to be present today. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us. Who's next? What about Gio? Where are you and who will you hug today?
Good morning. Forgive me for not being on video yet, but where am I? Today I am, let me look around. I'm here. I am here. And who am I going to hug today? I'm going to hug Beto from Beto's Tacos.
Awesome. Oh, I thought I handed it to you.
Handoff. All right. I gotta do it. Rashida, how are you this morning?
Good morning. Good morning, my family daily huddle. Oh, I am this morning. I am great. And I'm moving, I'm walking to the trail with my dog.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us and bringing all of your energy.
We are exactly how we say we are, and Rashida is always on fire. She's hearing her voice in the morning on Mondays. So, well, let's get started. Welcome back, and thank you for being here.
Absolutely. So you guys know Miss Elmire from last week. I'm going to give you a brief little bio again. Just I think it's super important. But Miss Elmire, I can't even speak anymore. Elmire Raven, currently the owner of Get It Right with Raven LLC, provides consulting to nonprofits as a troubleshooter and also in the area of board development. Her background is extensive. She's the former executive director of My Sister's House from February 1991 to May 2017. Her previous work experience is as follows. She's the director of volunteers of public relations for My Sister's House from 1989 to 1991, allocations director for Trident United Way, a police sergeant for Georgia State University, which we're going to have to talk more about that at some point. Working with issues and family violence coordinator at Trident Technical College from February 2004 to January 2005, and part-time faculty in the Human Services Department from January 2005 to December 2010. Her education, she has she went to Webster University and got her master's in counseling, her postgraduate studies, 58 hours in nonprofit administration, Bachelor of Social Work, and Bachelor of Science in criminal justice, all from Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia. Ms. Raven's held numerous leadership positions on various boards and has received many honors and awards. And she's also a survivor of domestic violence. So we are super, super, super appreciative to have you back this week, and for the next couple of weeks. We're going to do this little series up until her birthday, and then we're going to give it some time off, right? But to talk about nonprofits. So our question today is, why a nonprofit? So why a nonprofit?
So I'm going to start off by just talking about what I've heard a number of people say. Everybody told me that that's the direction I should go in, not a for-profit. Now, whenever I ask someone to explain that, they really never can give me a good answer, because I think in a lot of people's head, they think, okay, nonprofit means, okay, I don't get to pay taxes, I can kind of do whatever. Like, wrong answer. As a nonprofit, you still have to be accountable, still have to file taxes. And bottom line is, you're really a nonprofit business, so you still have to do all of those things. The other one is, I'm my own boss. Yeah, you may be your own boss, but you also have to work and keep that nonprofit going. So it's not, I'm my own boss, I get up when I want to, I come and go as I please. You still have to do what you need to do to be accountable and make sure your nonprofit is working, functioning, and hopefully financially sound. And the final one is, I want to make a difference. And that one is great, because I think most of us, well, the majority of us, would like to make a difference in the world, because we believe that's why we were put here and we want to make a difference. So I think that particular reason, when it comes to why nonprofit, will keep your nonprofit going and moving forward. So have you all heard all those reasons from other people?
I've heard all of those reasons. I've also heard grant money, right? Because you can grant money. I think I've heard a lot of different reasons of why to become a nonprofit, but I've definitely heard all of those. What about you?
Yeah, I think that what Kimberly and I were talking about this series, and we've been in the car a lot recently, traveling around, and I think that's one of the things that interests me is, sometimes I have heard people that wanted to go into the nonprofit space for what I would consider the wrong reasons, and that's basically what you're talking about. There is a misconception that it's a way to avoid taxation, or it's a way to do something like that. The one that I've heard more than anything, and this is probably, is that they can take donations and their donors can write those off. That's one of the big reasons people want to be a 501c3, is so that they can solicit money and the benefit for the donor being tax deductible. But that's pretty much the gist of what I've heard too.
And most certainly, even though there are many challenges being a nonprofit, nonprofits do survive through generous donations of money from donors, whether that's money or in-kind donations from all of their supporters. And that is wonderful, and nonprofits could not survive without that. However, I want to talk just a little bit about some advantages and some disadvantages. So one of the advantages is employee commitment. A lot of times people that work in nonprofits are very committed to that nonprofit and to its missions and whatever the focus is. So, for instance, I was at my sister's house for 28 years. So obviously I was very committed to the issue of domestic violence and that nonprofit. About 2/3 of my employees have been with me over 10 years. And that's a long time for people to work any place these days. So I think commitment from your employees is really an advantage when it comes to being a nonprofit. The other advantages is just your internal rewards from working in a nonprofit. You get satisfaction from making a difference and helping people, and knowing that you have helped people. So you get that reward of doing good and making a difference. The other one is, while you're not going to get rich working at a nonprofit, if it is a well-run nonprofit, you can have a lot of the basic benefits that other businesses have. I was very adamant about my employees having health insurance and dental and vacation and sick leave and all of the things that they would receive if they worked for a corporation, because I believed in their value. So I feel like, yes, it is an advantage if you are a well-run nonprofit. Now, the disadvantages are there's limited funding because there are so many nonprofits. And as Kimberly said, people talk about grants. Well, you have to write those grants. You have to be a good grant writer to receive and be awarded grants. And I always say to people, I don't feel it's difficult to get a grant. Grant management, that's another story. If you don't manage those grants and if you are not accountable for the grant money that you're receiving, you're headed for big problems. So looking at limited funding. The other disadvantage is you can actually have social pressure from your friends or community. I worked long hours, so people would be saying, okay, but when are we going to get together? When are you going to have some time to do this, that, and the other? What are you doing this weekend again? You're speaking where? So my family's like, well, okay, when are you coming to visit us again? Because I don't have family here. So you get this pressure from all sides. And most certainly family is important. We all know that and we all believe in that. So you have to make some time for what you want to do. And then, of course, the final disadvantage is public scrutiny, because you are a nonprofit and you're open to the public. They can look at all your information, whether they're supposed to be able to look at all your information. They should be able to look at your tax returns, your 990s, everything that you're doing. So if you do something wrong, then, okay, you're out there in the public and the public will scrutinize you. So while I enjoyed all my many years of nonprofit work and I still volunteer on nonprofit boards, it is important to be accountable for what you're doing.
I think for me, that was some of the biggest eye-opening pieces, is how accountable you actually have to be. I mean, I think anybody knows, right? Whether it's a for-profit business or a non-for-profit business, you should keep good books and you should have information. You should have all of that. But
Yeah.
I think I was really surprised at how many people are looking at your financials every single month, a couple of times a year, looking for grants and all of those kind of things. So I think that piece of it for me was really eye-opening, to just make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's, and definitely probably, well, I wouldn't say probably, but definitely more accountable than a small business. If you ran a small business for yourself, definitely more accountable in bookkeeping and, your financials and everything on the nonprofit side.
Well, and part of that is because the nonprofits, as I said last week, are governed by boards. And your board, they're the ones that's responsible and liable for what's happening in that nonprofit. So it behooves the board members to know what's going on, to know that you're doing what you say you're doing, and that you can account for all of your finances and services, that you're staying within your mission. Because I always tell people used to try to get me to add components. I'm like, no, this is our mission and we are going to stick with our mission. Our mission is clear. And in order for us to be an effective, efficient nonprofit, I need to stick to my mission and accomplish what I say I'm going to accomplish. I don't need to be all over the place just because I know I can get grant money in that area. And I've seen lots of nonprofits do that. They chase the money.
Mhm.
No, I'm not doing that. This is what we're doing, and this is what I need to stick to. So I also think people need to understand that as well.
I think that's a really good point. I think it's probably hard just to have blinders on, especially when there's money all around that you could, go over here and grab it and go over here and grab it. So keeping those blinders on and staying focused on your mission and all of that's a really important conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's ultimately the core of the nonprofit idea, is to have a need, a mission that you're passionate about, and get certain tax treatment for fulfilling that mission. So going back around full circle to the original comment about why nonprofit, right? It's ultimately to fulfill that mission. It's not about the tax treatment. Those are the things that you get because of what you're doing and because of what you're focused on. So
I have a question. Thinking about it with two different brains, right? Thinking about a for-profit business versus a non-profit business. If you have a business idea or a service idea, because a lot of businesses are still services, how would you choose between doing this for-profit or doing this non-for-profit? Like, what are some of the thought processes in your mind that would lead you one direction or the other? Does that make sense?
I would think that if you're leaning toward a for-profit, I had a friend, say for instance, that had an after-school program. And we had this extensive conversation because initially she kept saying, no, I want to be a nonprofit. I'm like, but why? You're charging people for this service. The children are coming there for tutoring in this after-school program. So basically, you're making money and you're going to be charging money. If you went the nonprofit route, like I knew she could get money, say through the Department of Social Services for some of their kids if they were in the school. However, you have to jump through all of their hoops as far as the paperwork, whatever guidelines they have when they come to visit, to monitor what you're doing. So I think you have to decide, okay, how much more work do I want to put into a nonprofit? I had 10 very large grants, and I had to be monitored by those grants at least twice a year in most cases. So that meant I had to have all my paperwork together. I had to have all my backup documents because most of those grants paid my staff. So anything that related to them.
And those grants specified.
Right. Yeah, it was very specific. They were to do this service, and the grant provided for their salary, their benefits, training. So anything that I put in the grant that related to that staff, I had to be able to show, verify, and prove it. So I had tons of paperwork. Tons. Plus, they would review our files on the clients. So that had to be in order too. So if I said we did counseling sessions daily, then when they reviewed those files, I needed to have documentation that the staff did counseling sessions daily and that those files were in order, whatever related to that client. So it's a lot of work, and I never had any problems being accountable because I believe in that, but it did require a lot of work and oversight as well. Because I was one of those people, I could do any of my staff jobs.
Yeah.
I did the overnight, I could do the bookkeeping, I could do newsletters, I could go to court, I spoke. So I was one of those people that believed, okay, you need to know what's going on. Just because your title is executive director does not mean you don't need to know what's going on.
You need to be able to do everything, right?
Absolutely.
Not
absolutely.
necessarily do everything, but be
Yeah,
able
but
to do
yeah,
everything.
know how it should be done.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. I love where we're going with this, and it's crazy how time flies. And I want to obviously we'll probably have some questions that you guys have, and some of those will be answered in the next couple of weeks as well. But I'm fascinated by this entire discussion, and the reality of it is that if a nonprofit is the way to go, and it makes sense, by all means do that. But understand, if you are the executive director, you are going to work harder for yourself than you would for anybody else, just like a self-employed individual. But you're also going to hire and have a board that's going to oversee all those things, not to mention grant people that are going to be supervising how you spend that money and what you do with it. And everybody who's anybody can see your books. So make sure you're in it for the right reason and you're doing it the right way. I think that's what Miss Elmire is saying here. And I think that's obviously what your services are that you offer now, which I know are a big benefit. So anything you want to wrap up with this morning before we open up for questions?
I would just say, do your research, as I said last week, to make sure that being a nonprofit is really what you want to do. Don't just listen to somebody else and go into it blindly, because if you don't have the administrative background, then you're headed for problems. You can have a wonderful service, but you've got to know how to manage that nonprofit.
It's not just the feel good part of a nonprofit. Right?
Yeah, no.
It's much more than that.
Yeah.
Well, I know last week we ran over just a few minutes because all of you guys had so many questions. So why don't we open it up and let you ask your questions today and let Miss Elmire answer it, and we'll dive deeper into more nonprofit questions next week, like about the board and things like that. But today, let's answer your questions. Who's got a question? Anybody can sing or dance while we wait?
All right, I saw Gio's hand go up. Go ahead, Gio.
Hi, yes, thank you for being here, Elmire. I don't know if maybe this question was addressed before, but I'm gonna ask.
Okay.
What if someone is looking to start a nonprofit? What will be the direction or a good place to point to get a grant? Where do people go for that?
Okay, so one, it would depend on, of course, what your focus is. And you can always do foundation searches specifically for your area. So if you're interested in youth, then you would search youth foundation grants. You can search them by state, city, counties, because there is money out there. You just have to be very consistent about searching and then evaluating each grant. Make sure you know the deadline to submit the grant. Make sure you know what documents they're requesting. So you have to follow the grant guidelines.
So it's as simple as, nothing is easy, right? But it's as simple as going to Google, looking for grant money for this foundation, for this cause, for this mission, and then start filtering information that way.
Absolutely. And like I said, you can start out with the simplest grants. Some of them are small amounts, couple $1,000, 2 pages, to $100,000, that's 50, 60 pages. So you just have to decide, okay, one, where your skills are in the grant writing area. 2, how much time do I want to invest in writing this grant? And if I get the grant, can I manage it?
Right. The measurables on the back end too.
Right. Yeah. Because most of the time, once you're given a grant, they're going to want to have your little interview before they award it, because they'll have more questions to make sure that you are in a position to manage those grants.
That's phenomenal. I'll say one more thing, Sorrel, and then you go. I think it's phenomenal because one of the most difficult aspects about being a business owner on a mission, which is a good opportunity for a nonprofit, is to generate sufficient clients so that you can stay alive. And in a way, for someone who's okay with accountability, to have the books be completely transparent, for someone who is really okay with that, this is a real support for that mission, right? And yeah, so I really thank you, Elmire.
I wished many times that we didn't have the clients when I was the director of the domestic violence nonprofit. I would have liked to go out of business. I used to say that.
Bet you would have.
Yes,
I
but
bet.
that was not the case.
I bet.
Yeah.
Before we go to Sorrel, because I know Sorrel has his hand up, just a quick question about the grant question. I know, because obviously we have 4 kids, and so colleges, and all that,
Yeah.
and they talk about scholarships, and a lot of scholarships go ungiven, right?
Right.
Apply. Do grants also? Are there a lot of grants that just expire because nobody applies for them?
Yes, they do. But sometimes people apply for them and they awarded them, and then they get their money back because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. That's not where you want to be.
Gotcha.
Because they're gonna want their money back if you didn't do it. Now,
Gotcha.
in most cases, you probably spent it, but they don't care anything about that. So
Give it
you need
back.
to figure
That's
out how you
okay.
can pay them back. Yeah. And
All
if
right, Sorrel.
if you're federal money, they'll put you on a department list where you
bet.
can't get any more money from them too.
They don't play about that.
No.
Sorrel?
Good morning, Miss Raven. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, thank you for your service to the people you serve. I appreciate that. I have a question regarding the tug of war that sometimes exists between the executive director and the board. I've heard some executive directors say this organization is executive director led. And I've heard others say, oh, this one is board led. Is there such a thing? Should it be that it's always board led?
That's going to be our discussion in the 3rd series, but I'm going to just briefly answer this. All nonprofits have to have a board to exist. The board is ultimately responsible. If the nonprofit did something and the IRS came after that nonprofit, they're coming for the board members. They're going to be getting the board members' money, and they will target you. So that's not where you want to be. Therefore, as far as I'm concerned, the nonprofit is governed by the board, but it should be led by the executive director on the day-to-day basis. The board doesn't want to do the executive director job, but the board governs that nonprofit, and they're ultimately responsible for what happens there.
So be careful before you raise your hand and say yes to being on a board of an organization.
Oh, absolutely. I asked 20 questions. They used to tease me. When they would interview me for a board, I would come in with my list of questions.
Yeah.
They don't have it. And I'm like, well, no, I need you have these things, which most people don't know off the cuff. They just think, oh, sure, I'll do it, or your friend asked them to do it, or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
I'm excited for that conversation.
I'm sure you
Very
are.
much so. I think we ran a good organization and a good board when we were together, but there were a lot of questions that I'm sure I had zero idea to ask. So I'm interested to see how that goes. But
All right, guys. Well, we're wrapping things up today, and so excited about where we're going with this series. And just thank you so much, Miss Elmire, for being here, and for all of the. I hope that this is beneficial for those of you that are out there. Come back next week, same time, and let's finish or keep working on this series. And Cece, I saw your hand pop up there, and now I see your question. How do you vet your board members? So that's also going to be part of this as we go forward. So tune back in again next week, and we'll get into some details about that. But before we sign off, guys, remember to our 8 tenets to love, laugh out loud, stress less, eat mostly plant-based, take care of your body, give, right, to nonprofits. They need it. Sleep. Don't forget to move. Get up and get out there and do something with your body. So, but lastly, check yourself before you wreck yourself. Take your pause. Guys, we will see you same time tomorrow morning and same time next week for the rest of the series.
Bye. Enjoy your week.
Bye. Have
Thank
a
you,
good week.
everyone.
Thank you. Have a wonderful
Bye.
day, everybody.
The rims gloss black off the interior.